Word up, it's me. How is it already June? I don't even know. I also don't know why I'm singing, but there you go. I'm Sarah Baxley. Welcome to Pinkie the Bear, my channel. I'm here with your astrology forecast for the month of June. Because it's already June 2019. What? I'm a little late in posting this video. As many of you know, I was up in Seattle for the Northwest Astrological Conference, which was amazing. And then afterwards I got to see a really awesome friend of mine, and we had a blast. And so I just got back just a couple days ago, and I was trying to like rush and film before I had left, but I had some family stuff going on, so I kind of had to work with that. But I'm here now, so welcome. Welcome everyone. Here we are. I put on way too much eye cream, so I'm like, my mascara is probably gonna run. So if you see that, don't you mind. Okay, so the two upcoming themes for the month of June are 1, uncertain illusion, and 2, tug of war. All right, so the first thing that I want to start out with is, how do I even start out with this? Okay, so we have something that's really big that's coming up in January 2020, and it's funny because all of us astrologers have been talking about it for a really long time. The last time that it happened, okay, so it's a Saturn Pluto conjunction, and the last time it happened was in 1982. And the last time that it happened when it was also conjunct the South Node was a lot longer before that, like a couple hundred years, I think. So anyway, so we have a Saturn Pluto conjunction that's coming up in January of 2020, and now and it's in the sign of Capricorn. And basically Saturn is about structure and like rules, restrictions, and boundaries, and Pluto is very much about like power and like sources of control, and it's also like known for kind of just like wiping a slate clean, basically, but it takes a really long time to do so, and it also takes kind of like bringing certain things up so that way it can be removed in order for a clean slate to be provided. So when you have a conjunction, that's when the two of those are within a 360-degree circle. They're right next to each other. And bear with me for a second. And so basically, so it's a really important configuration. So it only happens like about every like 35 to 37 years. The last time that we had it was when it was in the sign of Libra. And because Saturn has to do with structures, and Pluto is kind of like about demolishing those structures or like creating a way for like new structures to occur, you know, it really impacts society, right? It affects all of us. So in 1982, the last time this happened, this was when the Saturn-Pluto conjunction was in the sign of Libra. Now, as we know, Venus rules Libra. Libra has a strong association with relationships. And in 1982, like the late 70s, early 80s, was when divorce was at its highest rate. So that was kind of like when it had finally become normalized. I'm one of like the early 1980 babies, and you know, I'm sure that a lot of us can attest to, if you're watching this video and you're in the same age group, that you know, like a big chunk of us, like our parents, like were divorced, you know. So anyway, so just food for thought. So that was the last time that we had this conjunction. It was in Libra. It really changed the structures surrounding marriage, the concept of marriage, you know, same-sex marriage, divorce, like that divorce could be like something that was like more like widely accepted, or like couples that were like married, or I'm sorry, that lived together without being married. Like that was all like very taboo, like around that time. And when that Saturn-Pluto conjunction happened, that kind of was like sort of the peak. So it built up into it and kind of like faded around it, but right around that like 5-year period. So so similarly, we're in a Saturn-Pluto conjunction, but instead of being in the sign of Libra, it's now in the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn is ruled by Saturn itself, and it's all about literally like the structures and foundations of society. And in case anyone hasn't noticed, we've been definitely enduring a bit of that for a few years now. And so sort of the peak of that is in January 2020, and not to say that there's going to be like a specific event, just like how like in 1982, fall of 1982, it was like November of 82, there wasn't like a specific event that happened, but like it was like a lot of, because, you know, changes in society take time, right? So we're definitely going through like a structural change as a society, in case you didn't get the memo. And so this is something that's really big. Like we're noticing like old structures breaking down and, you know, sort of like paving the way, again, Pluto, for new, you know, structures, like implemented structures for the future. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, and now hopefully you're still sticking with me, that that's not too much information. But the reason why I bring this up is because the next couple months, like even though we have this like major formation that occurs in the beginning of next year, in January 12th-ish, I believe, and there's like other planets up in the mix, there's like a whole stellium of Capricorn when that happens. But anyway, so I'm getting off track. So basically, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because this very much ties in with this month and next month. And that's why I wanted to bring it up. Because there's going to be certain things, specifically there's a couple, there's a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse that occur next month in July that are sort of going to be tied in with kind of like these Saturn Pluto themes that we have going on in January of next year, as well as we have a major configuration this month that kind of like sets the tone for sort of like a peek into like events that like we're building up to. And again, keep in mind, like the same thing with that, like that conjunction that we had in 82, you know, it's not like there was like one big thing. It's like, it's just, it takes a long time, you know, same things like in a corporation, it takes a really, really long time to get like any type of like motion or things to change, right down like at the bottom levels. It's the same thing, you know, when you're working with society, it's like it just takes a really, really long time for changes to be made. It's very apparent that we've already have been going through and experiencing these changes. Very apparent. So, you know, so it's just kind of like more working through that, and it's going to be highlighted. And there's also a highlight that goes in with the USA's natal chart for the eclipses and for the couple months preceding too. So that's just something important to keep in mind. So with that being said, let me just hop into the themes. I know I went off on that whole tangent, but the themes are uncertain illusion and tug of war, right? So the first theme, uncertain illusion, that has to do with the Jupiter-Neptune square. And we have 3 of those that go on this year. So it kind of almost gives the theme for the whole year for, you know, collectiveness, collective humanity as a whole. And basically Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. So in astrology, it symbolizes like expanding anything it touches, right? So it like blows it up, which is great. Sometimes it can be like goodwill and good luck and good fortune and like totally like bringing it out. But sometimes like it can exacerbate other things as well. And in this case, it's making a square to Neptune, so that's a 90-degree angle. And Neptune is, basically Neptune's sole job is to blur boundaries. So when you have the Jupiter squaring Neptune, it's like this like blowing up of blurred boundaries or like disillusionment or like uncertainty. So, you know, this isn't again going to be something that's, you know, I think is going to be specifically event-based, but there's just like this underlying theme of like uncertainty and, you know, or like misinformation or like any of that kind of stuff that's going on throughout this whole year. And so it peaks again on the 16th of this month. So that's just something to keep in mind, both in your personal life, if there's like weird shit in the news, like around that time, like just sort of be more mindful that disillusionment is at a higher capacity at that time. Okay. The second theme, which was tug of war. Now this is the same, this kind of like also gives a flavor to that Saturn-Pluto conjunction that I was referring to of January of next year. So the tug of war is between Mars and Saturn. And basically they're making a 180-degree opposition to one another, meaning that they're exactly opposite one another on the astrological wheel. Now, it took Mars about 2.5 years to get to this position, right, in the sign of Cancer. And the other reason why this is really important is because we have the nodal axis right at both of them, which is again why this ties in with the eclipses, because we have 2 eclipses that happen next month, and eclipses only occur within 19 degrees of the nodes of the moon. So anyway, so we have Mars and we have Saturn, and basically Saturn is like rules, restrictions, boundaries, structure, responsibility, and then we have Mars up here, and Mars is like, let's go plunge forward, let's go do stuff. However, it's in the sign of Cancer, so it's not quite the same capacity, just being in that planet in that particular sign. But when you have this opposition, it's like very much like a tug of war. It's like really like wanting to hold down structure and, you know, the status quo and maintain, you know, a certain air of things. Meanwhile, like Mars is trying to like plunge forward and start anew. So it can feel, again, very frustrating. And when you tie that in with the disillusionment that we have with the Jupiter-Neptune square, you know, it just, sometimes it's like, is what we're fighting for, you know, or is the opposition the way that we actually think that it is, you know? Is there like a different way to go around it? Is there like misinformation that's involved in like one way or another? So again, this is like both in a societal way, again, because of the January 2020 Saturn Pluto conjunction, but also it's, you know, it's in our personal lives, you know? This is like really like, I feel like anytime like there's specifically the Mars Saturn squares, I feel like it's like a red light, green light thing, or like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. In this instance, it's got a little bit of that flavor, but it's got a little bit more of a frustrating quality to it with that opposition. So just keep in mind that, like, you know, if there's an added amount of frustration, or if you feel like you're trying to like plunge forward with something and you're not really getting where you want to go, trust that next month with the eclipses, it will be very apparent. Eclipses are very much event-based. So though I don't anticipate any sort of, you know, I mean, anything could happen. But if there are events that do transpire this month, they're all going to be tied in with the eclipses next month in July. And it's funny. Okay, this is the last thing, and then I swear I'm all done. It's so funny because earlier I was thinking like, fuck, like when I made the video for March, I remember saying like, oh, like, I think it was March. Anyway, yeah, March, because January we had eclipses, and then, yeah, and then March, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, don't worry, like, for the rest of the year, it's, like, pretty mellow, except for, like, the month of July because of those eclipses. But June is definite, I mean, June gives a little bit of a flavor into July, so just hold tight. I spoke too soon. Hang in there. I mean, really, like, kind of everything building up to this, like, Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Luckily, things will start to dissipate after that. And then we have like the USA Pluto return, which is a whole different shenanigans, but that's not until I think like 2026. So anyway, but hang tight, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any sort of like questions or comments or, you know, any of that, be sure to leave them below. If you don't already subscribe to the channel, then or follow me on Instagram. That's where like I kind of post a lot of stuff. I'm trying to work out into doing more actual like posts in the feed, but generally I do stories the most. So if you're there, find me there. I'm on Twitter too. Thank you so much for your time, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye.